Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by saying thank you to all of you for making time to be here this afternoon. And I also want to express my sincere gratitude to a few people who have made this book launch possible. Firstly, I want to thank Sri Abu Metha, the Honorable Advisor to the Chief Minister of Nagaland, for willingly agreeing to release my book, which I personally feel is which is personally very close to my heart. I always feel that especially young people in the state are very fortunate to have somebody like you leading in the forefront, advocating arts in different forms, particularly because I think he understands the pulse of our youth. As a gesture of my appreciation, I want to give a small token. Sir, if you can kindly accept it. Yes. I am surrounded. My sincere thanks goes to there were people who really encouraged me to bring it out in a book form, and so here we are. The book contains 60 poems, each with an accompanying image, and most of these poems were written during these 2 years of the pandemic. In a world before coronavirus, I would never have imagined grieving the loss of a loved one from so far away. Last year, during the peak of COVID-19 total lockdown, my mother and I sat at home talking about how tragic it is that you cannot even be there by the side of your loved ones as they battle COVID, and even more tragic if they had to die alone in their own night while he was in quarantine in Gyeongsang, and he just got a brief 5 minutes to bid farewell to his father. This image of him standing all by himself, grieving over this personal loss is something that still pierces my heart. No country across the world was spared from the fear, and I think more than ever we clung to life, despite the anxiety and loneliness brought about by the pandemic. Personally, I turned to poetry because expressing myself in writing has always has a way of making me feel better about life in general. Through the darkest days of the pandemic, I found hope in the goodness of nature and God's divine providence. Even when everything seemed to have come to a standstill, flowers still bloomed and seasons lived their time. The impermanence of life was always there, but I think this was made even more prominent by COVID. But I sought comfort in these unparalleled joys and incorporated them into my writing. We have all been through tough times, but I really think the pandemic has brought out the best in humanity. I thought it was beautiful that Naga communities across the state generously shared food and vegetables grown by their own hands with their fellow urban dwellers, or that students and people in the other professions came back to their villages to cultivate fields that were left abandoned for many years. Most of all, I marveled at the resilient spirit of human beings. Even when I read and also wrote with horror stories of people who have gone through the most terrifying experiences. When COVID hit home, and eventually happened to me as well sometime this year in June, I had the acute realization, especially about the mental impact it could have on anyone experiencing COVID. But I came out of it with immense gratitude in my heart and a better understanding, I hope, to document stories of people who have gone through the same thing. And while the pandemic has had a devastating impact on almost every aspect of our lives, I also think it unleashed the creative side in many people. For me, the greatest joy in writing these poems was being able to bring light and hope to somebody's life. I've had people reaching out to say how they could relate to my poetry and that they also found solace and joy. And there is nothing more I want out of this collection. It's true, I wrote the poem out of sheer pleasure, but this book is dedicated to those who told me that they never liked or understood poetry, but read some of mine and said they began to think otherwise. Also for those who showed me love, hope, and kindness, and let me exist in different beautiful worlds. And to all those resilient spirits that soared and shone through these dark times. I know the pandemic is not over yet, but I think we have persevered and survived one of the most devastating years in human history, and I still carry that hope that we will overcome someday. I hope you will enjoy reading this book as much as I enjoyed reading it. Also, taking this privilege, I would like to read out a few poems for all of us. All the poems in the collection are untitled. First one goes like this. Will there be flowers to line your path, sunshine to greet you where you are? Will there be laughter, joy, happiness? Will you remember these familiar things? Like the chair you sat upon one fine afternoon not so long ago, with 2 cups of tea placed between us, and you wore that expression like you always did when you are about to start a story from somewhere. Maybe I didn't tell you, but I swore to write it in my heart. I was collecting pages still, thinking there would be another day. I could walk in and find you, taking a stroll in your front yard amidst the blooming flowers. We did make plans, didn't we? How easy it was to say and think, there will be another time, another day. To pick stories where we left it, but nothing is ever here forever, and you were gone just too soon. Now I sit with questions inside my head, knowing only one thing for sure, that life will never be the same again. The second one goes like this. Shall we still carry hope in our hearts, even when they leave unexpectedly, one after the other, day after day, as young as they were, as happy as they were, only gone before their time? But even then, shall I hope and wait? I will still choose this uncertain life again and again. The next poem is written in memory of my grandmother, who lived to be 104. To the summer days of my teenage years, of strolling around in the fields with grandmother, who grew everything under the gaze of the drifting skies. And when our short-lived visits were over, she would bring home sunflower seeds, grown with her loving hands. What a time of happiness it was, and we were young and free from many aches. I'll read one last one. The earth waited, longing for the touch of hands that served in far-away places, in cities that don't recognize their names, nor the sweat of their brows on a scorching summer day. And for years and years, nothing had grown in these fertile lands. They just waited under the open skies, feeling the rain, the sun, the wind, but not the love of the hands that had long grown rich crops. But one day, the world started falling apart, and all they could do was return where they belonged. The future was uncertain, but the fields were happy. The farmers had come back home. Thank you.
The privilege of getting an early perusal into my dear friend Rita's latest collection of poetry, From This Broken Earth. Being already an admirer of her writings, having her previous books and her poetry collections on the bookshelves at home, and particularly since I had already read some of her latest and lovely poems on social media, I thought I knew what to expect. But reading this book was a uniquely special experience altogether. Poem by poem, she took me on a journey where once again I experienced the changing seasons in all their glory. I felt raindrops, heard the mournful cry of cicadas in the air, traversed lush green fields welcoming farmers, and then the pandemic with its reverberating silence. From the broken earth. is, in my humble opinion, Rita's best work yet. Her most sublime lyrical rendering of life. A timely collection that reflects the mood of an age. Through her evocative poems, Rita not only revisits timeless themes such as love and loss, nature and nostalgia, but there is also growth and maturity as she delves into pandemic experiences, poignantly evoking a sense of city to country through her idyllic pastoral scenes, and above all, exploring grief in all its raw intensity. A deep yearning for the past pervades throughout, while charming visuals create a delicate intimacy as we, the readers, her readers, are given rare glimpses into what might be the poet's own personal journey. Just like all or most of you here, I know Rita to be a woman who wears many hats. She's a journalist, she's a publisher, a writer, a poet, but most of all, just like our chairperson has just mentioned, I know her to be a nice person, a genuine friend, a truly good human being who is always able to find the silver lining, to still find hope despite seemingly bleak circumstances. And there is grace too in accepting and embracing loss. And this is, I feel, particularly evident in her verses on the pandemic, which serves as gentle reminders to us all that life is still good despite, and to find joy in the little things, and especially to find comfort in nature. I think this quiet strength, this quality in Rita, it makes her the best kind of poet, one whose poems move, comforts, and uplifts, the kind of poet who can connect with the masses and ignite the joy of poetry in anyone, even one who has never experienced poetry. And she does all this with, so unassumingly, with so much heart and a quiet restraint, which I feel is quintessentially Rita. And I will end with my favorite poem in this collection, which one of my favorites is very difficult to choose, but and this happens to be the first poem, and it's numbered 1. I was born in the rain, there was life, plump, summer. And while things grew, the earth was ripe, and here was life I knew, quiet, happy, and carefree. Thank you, Rita, for blessing us with your poems.
Privilege to publish with Rita. I'm very proud to be a Penthrill published poet, and I always like to tell anyone who asks me, what's the experience of publishing with Penthrill, that you get everything in one. Rita is all in one. She's your publisher, she's your editor, she's your copywriter, she's your designer, marketer, brand manager. So, as much as we're celebrating the release of her latest book, I also want to celebrate Penthrill and the complete package that it offers to aspiring writers. Today's book is yet another culmination of all these exceptional skills combined, and I must congratulate you, Rita, in producing this work of visual and literary art. Rita's poetry has always reminded me of one of my favorite Imagist poets, William Carlos Williams. And the critic Randall Jarrell wrote about Williams, "There is no optimistic blindness, though there is a fresh gaiety, a stubborn or invincible joyousness." And this is true for Rita's poetry. All poets paint images with words, and in particular, when imagists like Rita direct their poetic gaze through the frames of a camera, we are blessed with a lethal combination of a poet's photographs telling us exquisitely layered stories. If Rita's previous offering, Yearnings, captured her characteristic stubborn joyousness, then from the broken earth, this theme emerges invincible. In cultural theory, there is this notion of rupture, which is understood as a radical and often forceful form of discontinuity. For all their violence and trauma, it is moments of rupture that reveal reality as construction. And the pandemic has been this, isn't it? A series of ruptures, a deluge of wave upon wave of tragedy, uncertainty, and pain. Artists often create ruptures and glitches in their work to render them predictable and surmountable. That which we can control is chaos we can manage.
Chairperson Tisobi Meyase, Iman dead, Iman, the previous speakers. As the chairperson has said, I do wear a few hats here and there. A book is not something I've released before, and that too a book of poems. So thank you very much, Rita, for giving me this privilege. I'm indeed honored, humbled, and congratulations on acting what is another excellent achievement. Fantastic work. Dear friends, my friends from the press and media, Mr. Chairperson, servant of God, Reverend Linda, two previous speakers, Avinuo and Mekala Mama, Ruth and Zaseto, fantastic song. Thank you for that. You artists add so much joy to our lives. In the midst of all this stress and tension and chasing deadlines and trying to keep up with people's expectations, there are these little moments that give us joy and happiness and take us away to another world. So thank you very much for that. As I said, I've not done this before, and I don't know where to start. Iman heavy goje, so you have to simple Naga society must support art. Naga society must support creativity and innovation. It is art that will stay for hundreds of years. It is the work of artists who will take us back centuries, millennia. I keep saying it, I'll say it again. We get an idea of how life was, how different civilizations were, thanks to the work of artists. Paintings on caves, etches on rocks, color on canvas, lyrics, books, photographs, all works of art. They take us back, our imagination, into different eras and into different times of how the human being lived. And likewise, the present times will be told 100 years on, 1,000 years on by the artists. Artists, writers, creators, innovators. They influence minds, they impact thoughts. They create opinions in our minds. They guide us through different feelings. Therefore, they too are important leaders in society. Artists must know that they play leadership roles as they influence human minds. Naga society must understand that. If we are to progress in a positive way, if we are to achieve a desired level of civilization, we must begin by recognizing art, by giving space to artists, by allowing free flow of the human spirit. They take us away from the problems and the challenges that we face every day. As I said earlier, they add so much joy to our lives. Today, I'm so happy to be in the midst of so many writers. I must congratulate, especially Rita, for being such a dynamic person, a person of so many colors, as Mikala Mama had said, publisher, poet, writer, photographer, and so many more. I've had fantastic experiences with Rita in the past. We worked together. I did see her when we moved around, but I didn't hear her speak much. We had interactions with several prominent resource persons in one of the world's top universities, Queen's University, Belfast. We traveled to some of modern history's most historic locations, met a wide range of personalities, and had discussions, deliberations, and workshops. Rita did ask a few questions here and there when we sat down for those deliberations. And her questions did make us think again. I always knew and realized every time she participated, there was content there. I think Rita is a Naga treasure. With all the hats that she wears and all the things that she does, she's a treasure of Naga society. Her works will tell stories hundreds of years from today. Long after we're gone, Rita will continue to live. Long after we're gone, her works will continue to tell stories. Today, being in the midst of so many writers, educators, and academicians, I want to throw an idea to the floor. I've been to some literary events around the world and around the country. The Jaipur Lit is perhaps one of the most famous events. I keep seeing Mikala Mama in her social media on various literary events, workshops, seminars that she attends. I would want to see a Kohima Lit becoming an international event one day. Kohima is such a historic place. God has blessed us with so much here. The course of world history changed here in Kohima. If the Japanese had overrun Kohima and reached the train station and the airfield in Dimapur, perhaps the history of the Indian subcontinent would have been different. World history changed its course on the very soil that I stand and you sit right now. The Battle of Kohima was voted as the greatest battle fought by Great Britain in the 20th century. Every tombstone in that cemetery down below tells a story of 1,000 words and touches your heart in ways that is difficult to explain. As we all belong to this historic location, why not we also have a literary meet that celebrates the history of this place, that celebrates the talents of our people, and that will be a platform and an avenue for us Naga people to tell stories to the outside world. As I keep saying, for too long, we've been known for the wrong reasons. Violence, political turmoil, insurgency, guns, AK-47s, governance. We've been known for the wrong reasons. It's now time to be known for the right things, the good things. And those good things, those good stories have to be told by the new generation of artists that Naga society is producing. You have to be the new ambassadors of the Naga people to the new world. Today, we sit in a place that perhaps is so crucial and important in the geopolitics of the world. The gateway of the Indian subcontinent into the ASEAN, or On one side, we have the Indian subcontinent. On one side, we have the Chinese. On the other side, the ASEAN. And sitting in the middle of that, the gateway, is the Northeast. And the epicenter of that is Nagaland. What was perhaps a disadvantage a few generations ago, I think today, our geography is going to be our greatest strength. Our geography is going to be God's gift to us for us to emerge as a people in the coming century. Already, the world is talking about Asia being the center of the new world. The Middle East and the ASEAN are explaining and describing the present era as this is our time. How exciting that we will be growing old during our time, when Asia and the Indian subcontinent is an epicenter of the world's economy. How exciting that our young children will grow up in the Asian century. And I think, taking advantage of these aspects, it's time to throw Nagaland and the Naga people into the international arenas and platforms through good things, through our artists. I would challenge our writers and poets and people in the field to plan an appropriate Kohima Literary Festival. I assure you the full support of the government and my personal support. And let us together strive to bring the world here and take Nagaland and the Naga people to the world through our words.
NLTV
Not conclusive, exclusive.
Join.